Hello, my name is Aviva, and today I'm going to be giving you guys some book recommendations based off of the specific tropes that you requested. I recently asked all my Instagram followers to send me in some very specific tropes, and I'll try to find a book that matches it. And today I'm basically going to be responding to all of them. So thank you so much to everybody who did take the time to send something in, because without you guys, I wouldn't have been able to make this video. And if you want to be a part of these type of videos in the future and you didn't know how I get the content for them, I get them from my Instagram story. So if you're not following me there, then you definitely should. I will make sure to have my link in the description below in case you wanted to do that. But either way, with that said, I actually have made this video twice before in the past, and you guys seem to be really enjoying it. That's why I'm doing it a third time. But either way, I will have those two original videos linked in the description below. But also, the last time that I made this video, I ended with asking you guys a question for some recommendations for a very specific trope. So I wanted to answer them now because I did get a couple of responses. So the first one we're going to go through is the one that I ended with last time, and that is when he goes by a nickname and she is the only one allowed to call him by his first name. So I was only able to think of the Shatter Me series at the time that I was making the video, but afterwards you guys got back to me with a handful of more books. So Dear Enemy by Kristen Callahan supposedly has this, and I actually read this book and I don't remember this happening, but I'm sure it did if somebody said it. So I didn't do my research, but supposedly this has it as well. And then also Stolen Air by Sophie Lark. It's funny because I'm pretty sure I've read this one as well, and I just couldn't remember that this happened, but honestly it makes a lot of sense based off of like what the book is actually about. This is a mafia romance, but either way, it definitely has it, and I do remember really enjoying this book, so would recommend it. And anyway, also Bane by LJ Shen supposedly has this as well, and honestly, that makes a lot of sense, but I read this book so long ago that I'm not surprised that I didn't remember that this happens, but I'm pretty sure that he goes by the name Bane, but that might not actually be his name. I honestly can't remember the details, but supposedly he has a nickname, and she's the only one who calls him his real name, and I loved this book, so definitely would recommend checking it out as well. And then also Under Lock, his name is Dex, like everybody calls him Dex, but supposedly his real name is Charlie. And it's funny because I've actually read this book twice and I just did not remember that this happened, but either way it does. So it definitely fits into, this question. And then lastly, The Sweetest Oblivion. I'm pretty sure his name was Nero, but honestly, I shouldn't have even said that because I cannot remember. I read this book so long ago, but supposedly a couple of people said that this fits into that category as well. So The Sweetest Oblivion by Danielle Laurie. And then lastly, did I say lastly? Last? Well, either way, this is the actual last one. Hooked by Emily McIntyre has this as well. So pretty sure he goes by the name Hook, but that might not be his original name. And supposedly she's the only one who calls him by his real name. So don't take my word for that because I read that book like a couple of months ago and I don't remember. But supposedly all of those books do fit into that question that somebody had asked last time I made this video. So that is that. But either way, now we can actually move on to the new ones that people asked recently. So first of all, I just wanted to say, put it out right now that a lot of people asked for very generic things like age gap romances or forbidden romances or enemies to lovers romances, grumpy sunshines, things along those lines. And happens to be, I do have an entire playlist where I make romance book recommendation videos based off of different tropes. So I'm not going to be answering any of the very generic ones because I basically have an entire playlist for that. So if you weren't aware of that and you wanted to check out some of those videos, I will make sure to have a link for the entire playlist at the top of my description box below. So definitely check those out because I put a lot of work into making all different types of videos based off of specific tropes. So I'm not gonna repeat myself here with just a couple here and there when I have a whole video that literally answers with multiple, different books. So either way, with that said, the first specific thing that somebody asked for was tatted boys with a soft side. So I had first thought of Under Lock because he is he's part of a motorcycle club and he actually owns a tattoo shop. So he is very much tatted up. He even has a dick piercing, and basically he comes off as very, very mean and arrogant and everything like that. But then once you get to know him, you realize that he's just a protective little softie, and I absolutely loved him. So he is definitely a tatted man with a secret soft side. And then also I was able to think of Faked by Carla Sorensen. So this is kind of a fake dating-ish sort of book. You basically start off the story where it's this girl is going to pretend to be be her twin sister to go on a date with her crush, who happens to be her twin sister's best friend. And then his older brother ends up showing up and she ends up having to go on a date with him, pretending to be her twin sister. And then it ends up turning into like this whole fake dating scenario. It is a really, really good time, but happens to be this older brother that she's gonna end up going on a date with, that like is the main male character of this book, is a tatted professional snowboarder. So it is so unique. I never really read books with like, you know, snowboarding as like, you know, a topic in the book, but this one, it definitely had it. So I really, really did love this story. And what's funny is that a couple of other people asked for something very specific that this book fits into as well. A couple people said snowed in forced proximity and or one bed trope, but specifically stuck in the snow. And then another person asked for snowed in at a remote mountain cabin. And I'm not going to give anything away, so I'm just going to say that this book definitely fits into that as well. So if you are looking for that, I definitely do recommend checking out Faked by Carla Sorensen. But either way, with that said, someone else asked for workplace romance in a corporate setting. So I was first able to think of The Stopover by T.L. Swan. So I didn't absolutely love this book, but it honestly was like a fine enough time that I'm willing to recommend it. But either way, you're following these two people who met on an airplane, and they ended up having a stopover, and then they had a one-night stand, and then they kind of like went their separate ways. And then she ends up getting like this new job at this like corporate office of sorts. And who do you know is her new boss? That's kind of like the owner of the company, this guy that she had a one-night stand with. So it definitely is like a very corporate setting, even though I might be wrong on the fact that like it was corporate, but I very much remember him being like, you know, on the top of the building, and he had like, you know, the penthouse suite, and there was a ton of workers, and like there were like cameras all over the place, and he used to like stalk her through the cameras. And I remember it being set up as a very workplace environment, and for some odd reason I feel like it definitely was like a corporate thing. I don't think I'm wrong about this, but if I am, then I apologize. But either way, this definitely fits into like the workplace environment, corporate vibed setting. If not, then definitely corporate. But either way, yeah, The Stopover by T.L. Swan. Anyway, after that, someone asked for a book with no miscommunication, and the first one I was able to think of was Consider Me by Becca Mack. And why I specifically thought about that is because the first, like when I did read this book originally, I remember loving it because it was basically the opposite of no miscommunication. These two people had like the best communication I've ever read in a book like ever. It's basically like one of those like a professional hockey, I was a player until I met you vibes. Like he definitely was a player. He met this girl and she didn't really want to go out with him because she wasn't into like, you know, one night stands and all that sort of stuff. So he basically decides to like chase after her and convince her to go out with him. And she was very iffy about going out with him, and she had a lot of insecurities about it and everything like that. So just the way that they like talked about their insecurities and like dealt with like, you know, making this relationship work and everything like that was so freaking good on the communication, you know, like whatever you want to call it. They were so good at communicating that definitely if you're looking for something that has no miscommunication, I think this book would be super up your alley. Literally couldn't recommend it more. Like if you're a fan of The Deal by Al Kennedy, then you're just gonna absolutely love this book. So yeah, Consider Me by Becca Mack. But anyway, after that, someone asked for a rich man who cares about no one except her and is morally gray and kills people. And the first one I was able to think of was Crow. And I don't remember the A. Zavalero maybe is the author. I don't know. But either way, it's on the screen. So it doesn't really matter. But basically, this is a mafia romance. And I think he was like the head of a mafia or something like that. Either way, I know that he owns like one of these like clubs, and she's going to end up like kind of like sneaking in and working there because she's trying to find like her missing friends who used to work there. And basically, she's gonna end up having a romance with like, you know, the owner of this club / like the head of the mafia. And he is definitely extremely morally gray. He definitely kills people, but he has a super weird soft side for her. So if that was something that you were looking for, then I definitely do recommend it because it definitely gave off those like, touch her and you die sort of vibes. Like he was super protective of her, but like he was killing people left and right in front of her and everything like that. So definitely recommend checking that one out if that's what you were looking for. But either way, after that, somebody asked for, well, actually, two people asked for two different things, and I was able to think of one book for it. So cats or dogs playing an important role in the book. And then also somebody else asked for a 10-year age gap. And I think that A False Start by Elsie Silver would definitely fit into this category because you're following this brother's best friend scenario where the guy is 14 years older than her. And it's a bit of forbiddenness type of thing because first of all, he's 14 years older than her. And then also it's her brother's best friend. And then happens to be it at one point in the book, this like dog comes into it because she's like a vet of sorts. Like she works at a veterinary, whatever you want to call it. And he ends up like hitting a dog and they have to amputate his leg. And then the dog ends up, he ends up, what's it called? Like taking the dog for himself, like adopting the dog or whatever. And it ends up being like a pretty big part of the story. And basically, I don't know if that was like a spoiler for the book or not, but if you were looking for something where the dog is a big part of the story, then I definitely would recommend this one. And happens to be, it also has a very big age gap. So if you're looking for that as well, then this one fits into it too. And then happens to be, I also did read another book that fits into like when the cat or a dog is like a very big part of the story. And that book is On the Rocks by Candy Steiner. And I'm pretty sure, like 99% sure, that in this book, at one point they ended up going to like an animal shelter to pick out a dog for him. And then it ends up becoming like a pretty like solid part of the story. Like not a huge part, like not as big as like the false start, but I just remember it being like a pretty big moment in the book. So if that was something that you were looking for, then On the Rocks would definitely, hit that category too. And I just remembered off the top of my head that they had an age gap romance as well. So basically, two different prompts, two different books, both fit into the same category. That was good on me. I can't believe I forgot that in the moment, but either way, let's move on. Next up, someone said a book that makes you go through an emotional roller coaster. So I have a couple to share with you. First of all, Kate Stewart. So like Drive, and then also the Ravenhood series. That definitely will put you through an emotional roller coaster. Exodus is kind of like a sad emotional roller coaster, like it's book 2 in the Ravenhood series. And then Drive is an emotional roller coaster, but not as sad. But either way, definitely will pull out your heartstrings, make you give you all of the feelings of sorts. And then also Come Back to Me by Mila Gray. This is either like a YA or a new adult romance. And either way, this book starts off in like literally the first chapter. You find out that throughout the book, at some point, someone is going to die and you don't know who it's going to be. And then you end up having a brother's best friend romance. And you basically don't know if at the end of the book, the brother's going to die or the brother's best friend that she's falling in love with is going to die. And when you get there, your heart just breaks. But it's such a freaking good story. So like, obviously, if you're looking for something to like emotionally wreck you, like you're looking for this, but also like, it's such a good book. And don't let, the fact that someone's going to die in the book like deter you from reading it, because even though it's going to break your heart, it's such a freaking good story. So definitely do recommend checking that one out if you want a pretty good cry. And then I think that was all that I wanted to share with you for that. I also kind of had like Long Way Down by like the Addicted / Calloway sister series. The Chris and Becca Ritchie, but it's from the Addicted / Calloway sister series. It's the last book in the series before the epilogue, and it definitely did pull at my heartstrings, but it's kind of like not right for me to recommend it because it's the last book in the series and you have to read 9 books before you get there. But if you were interested in the Addicted / Calloway sister series, then just know that at some point by the end of the story, you will get a couple of good cries. So yeah, that is that. Anyway, after that, someone else asked for an age gap workplace environment romance, and I was able to think of Scandalous by Ella J. Shen. So this is a single dad age gap romance, and it is pretty forbidden because she is, I forgot how much younger than is, like maybe he's like 32 and she's like 19 of sorts, but either way, her father is this guy's partner, and she's gonna end up getting an internship in the office, and then they're gonna have a very forbidden romance. So definitely recommend checking that one out because I remember really loving it when I read it. And also he's like a single dad, so that just makes it like extra awesome. So yeah, that is that. And then next up, someone asked for He's Obsessed and She Has No Idea. And I recently read this book called Baking Me Crazy, and basically like 5 years ago he had asked her out on a date and she ended up friend zoning him because she just wasn't really ready to go out at the time because like she was recently like put into a wheelchair, she got sick, and then basically she was just like getting used to like her new life of sorts. And so she ended up just like becoming best friends with him, and for the past 5 years he's been secretly pining after her. And then she basically had absolutely no idea, and then at one point she's like ready to start dating, but she didn't realize that like he has feelings for her, so she wants to start dating someone else. And then he's basically gonna be like, oh my god, I've been sitting here this entire time in love with you, waiting for this moment. I'm now gonna have to convince you to basically like go out with me and realize that like I'm perfect for you and everything like that. So definitely is one where he is absolutely obsessed with her the entire time, and she had no clue until later into the book. So yeah, that is that. And then next up, someone asked for a YA fantasy romance that is not popular, and I have to very highly recommend you the Trial series by Amanda Hocking. I absolutely love this book. You're basically following this girl who's like a changeling. She thought that she was normal, and then one day these people come to her and is like, look, this isn't your real family. You were switched at birth and you are actually our princess, and we want to bring you home so that you can learn about your powers and become our queen and everything like that. And she's like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't think so. But obviously eventually she's going to go, and then there's going to be like a romance between a bodyguard, like a forbidden romance between a bodyguard, and then at one point like a prince is going to come in and something's going to happen between that, and then basically there's a lot of stuff going on in the romance department. But also it is such an amazing YA fantasy romance series, and I seriously could not recommend it enough. It's one of the original fantasy series that I ever read. I found it in middle grade, and since then I've read it literally 7 or 8 times. Absolutely love it. One of my favorite series of all time, so definitely recommend checking that out. But either way, after that, someone asked for a soft nerdy love interest because they're getting kind of sick of alpha males. So the first book I was able to think of is this book called Faking It. So I did read this book a very, very, very long time ago, so it might not be as good as I remember it being, but when I read it, I remember really enjoying it. It's basically a fake dating scenario between a good boy and a bad girl. This girl is basically all tatted up, and she kind of dates the bad boys all the time, and basically she's just one of those bad girl sort of people, and basically her parents have no idea that this is actually who she's like. She always pretends to be their sweet little daughter when they come around, and happens to be they're about to surprise her on a visit, and they give her a 10-minute warning, and basically they want to meet her boyfriend, but she doesn't want them to meet her boyfriend because her boyfriend's all tatted up. He's kind of motorcycle bad guy kind of thing. So she basically freaks out, tells her boyfriend to get out of here, and she's in a coffee shop at the time, so she ends up walking up to this very random nerdy looking guy who's wearing a sweater and glasses and probably reading a book or something like that. And basically she's like, do you mind fake dating me for half an hour just so I could introduce you to my parents, because I don't want them to meet my real boyfriend. And he's like, why the hell not? And then it's basically going to end up being their romance. So it's a very cute story from what I remember, but again, if it's not good, then please don't blame me, because I did read it a very long time ago, but definitely does have a very soft nerdy love interest. So yeah, that is that. But either way, 2 different people asked for something that is very similar, so I'm just bunching them together. They basically asked for when she is pregnant with another man's baby / where she's already pregnant when they meet and he ends up claiming her kid as his own. So I was able to think of 2 books for this. One book I didn't love, and then the other book I did like. So basically, Temporary Roomies and then 1% of You. Temporary Roomies is an enemies to lovers where she's already pregnant, and I forgot what happened to her person who got her pregnant or whatever, but he's definitely not in the picture, and basically she's gonna end up having a relationship with this guy that she hates, who I'm pretty sure is her best friend brother or something like that. But either way, she was already pregnant at the time that this all started, so that is that. But personally, I didn't really love this book, but I know that some people do, so I was just gonna mention it very quickly. But then it happens to be 1% of You I really did enjoy. You're following this girl who is already pregnant, and she also already has a kid, and she's gonna end up having a romance with the guy who lives across the street from her. And it's very guy falls first, guy falls harder. He kind of pushes himself into their life, tries to take care of them, just hang out with them, become friends with them, and then obviously by the end of it, he's gonna end up claiming the kid that is gonna be born in the book as his own. So very adorable story. I did really like that one when I read it, and Temporary Roomie happens to fit into this scenario as well, but I didn't love it as much. But either way, with that said, another thing that someone asked for is when he takes care of her throughout the entire book. So this is technically kind of a spoiler for the book, but I'm not going to give you any context. So hopefully, this won't spoil it too much. But basically, Enemies by Tijan, this definitely happens. It's an enemies to lovers sports romance where these 2 people, they were good friends when they were children. And then, kind of when puberty hit, they decided to go their own ways, and they've kind of hated each other ever since. And now they come back into each other's life, something happens, and throughout the entire book, he is definitely going to end up taking care of her. So I don't want to say anything more than that because I don't want to spoil the book, but definitely recommend checking this book out because I really, really did love it. So if you're into sports romances, you're into enemies to lovers, and you're into when he takes care of her, this book will definitely check all of those boxes. So anyway, after that, a couple of people asked for something that I was able to think of 1 book for, so I'm bunching it together again. And they basically said when they broke up but but still pine for each other and get jealous when they date other people. And then also someone asked for childhood best friends to lovers, and they stayed friends throughout the years. And happened to be, I'm currently in the middle of rereading the Dark Artifices series by Cassandra Clare. So this is like part of the Shadowhunter universe. And those two questions definitely fit into this scenario, because you're following a childhood best friends to lovers forbidden romance, and happens to be at some point throughout the book, they're going to end up like dating other people, but they're still pining after each other. But because it's forbidden, they can't be together. And that's like why they're not together. But then they end up getting jealous of the people that they're ending up dating. So basically a lot of stuff going on in this series, and it is very popular. So I'd be surprised if you haven't heard about it before, but just in case, I did want to mention it. So definitely recommend checking it out if you have not read it yet and you are looking for those type of things. But either way, after that, someone else asked for Overprotective Brother's Best Friend. So first I had thought of Watch Over Me by Mila Gray. So this book, you're following this girl who is kind of running away and trying to hide because she has an abusive father who is trying to chase like her and her siblings down. And she's going to end up getting protected by her brother's best friend, because her brother's in the army. So like he can't necessarily like be around to like protect his family at the moment. So he leaves his siblings with his best friend, who happens to be like in some sort of army thing. I think he was like a Coast Guard or something like that. And either way, he's going to end up being extremely protective over her and then like her siblings or whatever is the situation with her family. And anyway, it is a very, very solid book. It's literally called To Watch Over Me, and it happens to be about a brother's best friend scenario. So definitely fits into the overprotective category with a brother's best friend situation. So yeah, Watch Over Me by Mila Gray. And then happens to be, I was also able to think of another book that fits into this. And also somebody asked for like a brother's best friends with an enemies to lover scenario. And for those two things, Fair Catch by Candy Steiner definitely fits into this situation. So happens to be, I did recently read this book and I liked it for a couple of reasons, but then I didn't end up liking it for a couple of other reasons. But happens to be like overall it was a pretty solid read. So I'm going to recommend it to you in case you were specifically looking for this, because it is a brother's best friends, enemies to lovers, and he does end up getting protected over her, because basically they're going to end up going to the same college, and she's going to be on the same football team as him. Like she's the only girl on the football team, and because of that, he's going to end up being extremely protective of her, trying to keep like all the other guys away from her and everything like that. Like he's basically always looking out for her because like, it's his best friend's little sister, and he kind of like promised his best friend that he'll look after her. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the book. Also, like she hates his guts for something that happened in their past. And basically it's a solid story. There were a couple of things I didn't like about the book, but overall, if you were looking for something like in that category, I would recommend checking it out, because overall it's a pretty solid read. So yeah, Fair Catch by Candy Steiner. But anyway, let's just do a couple more, because I feel like I've been sitting here forever and this video is getting to be way too long. So next up, someone asked for, I know everybody hates this trope, but a well done pregnancy trope. And it happens to be, I absolutely hate this trope as well. But I did think that Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating did it pretty solidly. I don't really want to give away any spoilers, but basically it does have an accidental pregnancy. And I personally was not bothered by how it actually went down. So yeah, that is that. I definitely would recommend Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating if you were looking for a pretty good accidental pregnancy trope. And then happens to be, someone else asked for funny couple interactions, and Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating definitely fits into this as well, because it's kind of got this like quirky girl with this like very like straight up guy, and they're gonna end up becoming like really good friends and then going on a bunch of like double dates together, because they're both trying to get back out there and they're friends, so they end up setting each other up on dates. Obviously they're gonna end up falling for each other, but just the way that the book ends up playing out is a really fun time, and the two main people definitely do have a ton of really fun and funny interactions. So definitely, again, would recommend Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. And then happens to be one more thing that someone asked for that Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating fits into, is when everyone knows they're in love except them. And the whole thing about the book is that they end up becoming really good friends, and then they go on double dates, and then they end up having a better time on the date with each other than with the dates that they were actually on the date with. So it's kind of like that whole scenario where it's like everybody basically realizes that they get along super well and they should be the ones that like should be dating, except they don't realize what's going on because they're just like having a great time hanging out with each other. So if you were into like, when everybody knows they're in love except for them, then Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating definitely fits into that as well. And then happens to be, I do have a couple of others that fit into the category of when everybody knows that they're in love besides for them. So first up was Focus by Carla Sorensen. So this book is kind of like an enemies to lovers-ish vibe. I don't really want to say that, but basically these two people have a bit of a history, and this guy doesn't want anything to do with this girl now that they're going to be forced into a situation together. He's basically like a professional football player, and he's extremely focused on the game. He kind of likes to stay away from girls, and the reason why he stays away from girls is because of this girl. And then happens to be she is now working for the team that he is now playing on, and they're going to end up getting forced into this situation where they're going to have to work together. And basically they're going to be hanging out with each other a lot, and everybody around them basically keeps realizing that they're falling for each other, except they don't realize that they're falling for each other. So the way that it goes down definitely fits into this vibe, because I really loved seeing how like everyone around them basically realized what was going on besides for them. Well, more like besides for him. Like it took him a very long time to realize that he's actually falling in love with this girl, but basically the way it went down was adorable, so I definitely recommend it. And then happens to be another book that I recently read was Protecting You by Claire Kinsley. So this is the first book. You do have to read like the second book in the series to get this couple's happily ever after. And the second book is called like Fighting for Us. But basically the story starts off where these two people are childhood best friends, and then they're going to end up like falling for, like they both really pined after each other this entire time, but never really realized that the other felt the way. So they never did anything about it until they were a little bit older. And basically the whole thing about like the book was that everyone around them knew that they were basically in love with each other, but like the whole time they didn't think that the other felt the same way. So like for a very long time they never made a move on each other, and it was really cute to see how like everyone in their life was like, oh yeah, I knew that that was going to happen. Like I'm not surprised to hear that like you're dating each other now, sort of thing. So it was very cute how it went down. So if you did want to, you know, see one of those type of stories, then I definitely would recommend Protecting You by Claire Kinsley. And happens to be another book that fits into another thing that someone asked for that fits into Protecting You by Claire Kinsley is When They Can't Be Together Because of External Factors for Years on End. And that particularly fits into the second book in this story, which is Fighting for Us, because at the end of the first book, once they get together, something is going to pull them apart for 7 years. And then the second book basically picks up 7 years later, and now they're back together and they're going to try and make it work. And basically, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but if you were looking for something where they can't be together for external factors for years on end, then these two books, Protecting You and then Fighting for Us, definitely fits into that category. But either way, I have been here for absolutely forever. So I do have to stop here. So I'm just going to be doing one more for this video. And that is when when one of them is sick. That's what someone asked for. When one of them is sick. And I was able to think of Ruckus / Broken Night by LJ Shen. So basically, Ruckus is the original story, and this girl has like a disease of sort. I don't want to say disease, but say basically something is wrong with her, and she is very sick. And basically, he's going to fall in love with her anyway. He's like, "Oh, I want to be with you for as long as I can because like, I'd rather be with you than not be with you and just let you be sick and die on your own." And happens to be by the end of the book, she does not die, so don't worry about that. But happens to be there is a second gen series, and in the series, you get the second book, which is called A Broken Night, and it happens to be about their children. And I don't really want to give away any spoilers, but basically that whole storyline from the original book does end up concluding in that story years and years later. So very heartbreaking, but also really, really good time. So yeah, Ruckus and then A Broken Night by LJ Shen. But either way, that is about it. I am going to end this video now because there were so many other ones that I did want to get through, but I do have to stop at some point. So I hope that I ended up answering the one that you requested. I hope that if someone requested this, that you ended up watching this video so you got your recommendation. But either way, if you wanted to ask me any other very specific tropes, I'd be happy to try to give you some book recs down in the comment section below. So let's continue the conversation here because I do have to end this video now. So either way, if you enjoyed watching this video, then please give it a thumbs up. Also subscribe to my channel if you're not currently subscribed because I would really appreciate it. But either way, I really do appreciate you watching this video and taking the time to do that. So thank you for that. But either way, with that said, until next time, enjoy reading.